From the Tower of Babel to today's headlines, globalism has always been about uniting the world without God. But prophecy says a one-world government is coming, and America won't be a part of it. President Trump's tariffs, well, they're more than economics. They're a prophetic pushback against global control. Join us now as we dive into President Trump's prophetic tariff policies and more on this edition of the Endtime Show. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries, and I do thank you for joining me on this edition of the Endtime Show. And everybody wants to know what's going on with the tariffs. And is it by grand design? Did it just all happen by accident? Well, that's what I'm going to focus on today. And I interviewed a friend of mine. I've interviewed him many times, Kevin Freeman with the Economic War Room, working with Glenn Beck and them over there at the Blaze and different things. And he wrote a book called According to Plan. And he's talking about the elite's secret plan to sabotage America. And on page 87 of his book, he says the elites are working to weaken America so she can no longer impede their evil plans. Now, they're working militarily in many ways to do that. But number one, he says that they are attacking our economic strength to keep us just buried under mountains of debt, right? In an effort to keep us from being able to impede the evil plans of these elitists. Well, enter a President Trump working against that. Not a globalist, but a nationalist. You say, what are you talking about, Dave? Well, let's get into that today. You know, globalism says the age of borders around nations, that's over. That's done away with. The nations should dissolve their boundaries, unite under a single global system. That's globalism. And the end goal is a one-world government. Nationalism, so a globalist, when I say globalist from now on, think about that mindset. Nationalism, a nationalist, on the other hand, stands for a sovereign nation, protecting their borders, and each of these nations rooted in their own shared language, culture, values, and nationalists push back against globalism because they know it means giving up national control. Well, at its core, nationalism, or America First, is the mission behind President Trump's bold tariff agenda. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We'll talk about some other things if we have time, but I want to focus on this because everybody's talking about the tariff agenda right now. President Trump, what? It's going to destroy America and ruin our economy and all this sort of stuff. Okay, everybody just relax a little bit. America's going to be here all the way through. We're going to be powerful enough to protect Israel in the end time. America has a God-given destiny, okay? We're not going under. And so everybody just kind of, I want to set your mind at ease here a little bit, but I really want to get into some detail on President Trump's tariffs. First, let me mention Birch Gold. You know, these tariff wars, recession fears, and this stubborn inflation. No wonder gold has been routinely hitting all-time highs. In volatile markets like right now, don't sit on the sidelines with your head in the sand. Take control and safeguard your savings. That's why so many Americans today are turning to the Birch Gold Group. They've helped tens of thousands convert in their existing IRAs and 401ks into an IRA in physical gold. And is it time for you to hedge against inflation and economic instability with gold? And to learn how to own physical gold in a tax-sheltered account, visit birchgold.com/endtime, and Birch Gold will send you a free, no-obligation info kit. Again, visit birchgold.com/endtime. All right. Now, We talk about globalism. Again, it's basically leading us towards a world governing body. The nation state, man, that's old news. Everybody, don't protect your borders. We want to create a global state that answers to a world governing body. That's the goal of a globalist. Well, we can trace the ancient origins of globalism all the way back to the book of Genesis, the book of beginnings. After the flood, humanity gathered on the plains of Shinar to build a tower reaching into the heavens, known as the Tower of Babel. And their goal, what was it? Well, to unite under one language, one city, and a self-made plan of salvation and self-government. But in response, God didn't want that, did he? God did not want a world governing situation where mankind would rely upon themselves. So God went down, confused their language, scattered them across the earth, and giving rise to nations and diversity in language. God did not want a world government or a world religious situation. You cannot take your salvation into your own hands. You can't do one thing to save yourself. Only God can save you. But the people back then didn't think so. Well, now we're coming into the end-time world governing body. It's been established for years now. Totally anti-God. Globalism. You know, that moment, really, the Tower of Babel, that marked really the first attempt at this global unity without God, but it wouldn't be the last. I mean, that's a problem, right? We've seen it all throughout time. Many global rulers that claimed to be God themselves. And many times the pharaohs and different people, the people would look to them like almost like a god. But fast forward from the book of Genesis, about close to 6,000 years now, to today. And the world is once again moving toward unity under the banner of globalism. Biblical prophecies, obviously, particularly in Daniel 7 and Revelation 13, they describe a future world government led by this figure known as the beast or the Antichrist. And this empire, made up of symbolic beasts representing major world powers, will persecute believers and demand religious conformity. Just like back in what they were doing back when the time of the Tower of Babel. Now, interestingly, while many nations are drawn into this global power, most nations on the earth are pro-globalism, whether they want to be or not. Many nations, underdeveloped nations, poor, they're just being sucked up into this system. And that's why they want to keep the United States so covered in debt so there's no means of resistance. Okay? But the Bible suggests that the United States, symbolized by the eagle's wings in Daniel 7 and Revelation 12, will stand apart from all of this, offering protection to Israel during the Great Tribulation, of course, the final 3.5 year period of this just intense global turmoil and persecution. The worst persecution the world has ever known or ever will know. This is just ahead of us now. So, in this prophecy-driven worldview, globalism isn't just politics. It's part of a spiritual battle with ancient roots and really an end-time climax. And so I wanted to talk to you about this today because I don't want us to be caught unaware by all of this. When you look in the news, they're like Donald Trump and this tariff and that, and they're going to destroy our economy, and prices are going to go up. And no, okay, here's what I want to do on our program today. I am going to get detailed into it, but I want to step back and look at this from the big perspective here. It's the only way you can really understand this, because you can get so caught up in the details, you can't see the forest for the trees that are right in front of you. That's what the news media is famous for doing. But I want to make sure we have the big perspective here. And so, I'm sorry, the big picture. So, with this understanding, Let's talk about President Trump's tariff agenda, because it's not just about economics. It's about an ideology. I don't know where President Trump, unless he's just a businessman and he's been looking at this from every angle, but somehow or another, the guy gets it right. I mean, he is America first, and he is willing to take the heat of all of these people that are just hammering him about these tariffs. He's willing to take the heat and charge straight forward because he knows what's going to be best for America. And I'm glad he's doing it. And you'll see why when I'm done here. President Trump's tariffs are a direct rejection of the globalist model that's dominated for decades. Globalism told America, and you say, well, who listened to them? Globalist presidents and economists and different people that were making the decisions. But it's all by grand design. The situation we're in right now did not happen by accident. I hope you don't think that. It's all, just like Kevin Freeman's book, it's all according to plan. You say, oh, Dave, you're being a conspiracy theorist. You really think so? I mean, if you follow us at all, this global governing system and this grand design that's happening, it's very spiritual, but it's also tied into politics. Politics is Satan's method of ruling the world. And yesterday's conspiracy theory is today's headlines. I mean, think about it. So, globalism, efforts toward a world governing body. Globalism told us, America, to ship your jobs overseas, rely on foreign factories, rely on China for most of your pharmaceuticals. I mean, think about that. If you're a diabetic, or if you're have any kind of high blood pressure, I mean, think about all your normal day-to-day pharmaceuticals. Most of that stuff, we rely on China for that. Is that an accident? Foreign factories. They've made it so it's not, if you've ever watched the show Shark Tank, I've seen some of those on YouTube, and Kevin O'Leary says, the guy says, or the lady, I want to make my product in America. And he's like, why are you doing that? That's such a mistake. Go to China and get it for pennies on the dollar. Okay? Encouraging people to go, don't do a factory here in America. Go overseas and make it. And let these international organizations call the shots. It's globalism. Well, Trump comes along and says, nope, done with that. We're going to bring companies and different things back here in America. These tariffs are about taking back control. They send a message loud and clear. America won't play by one-sided trade rules anymore. If other countries tax our goods, we're going to tax theirs. And it's simple. And they also push companies to stop outsourcing and start investing right here at home, in our workers, in our towns, in our industries. Now think about this. A lot of people are going overseas because it's so much cheaper to make their product and then sell it right back here in America. Well, we want to make it here. We want investments but think about that. This has been happening for decades. There has to be a great reset. And I'm not talking about Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. I'm talking about a great reset in America. Well, what are we going to do? Do we continue to just go on and on and on like we have been for decades, and all of this money flowing overseas? I'm talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in trade deficits, everybody, with China and Europe and different places. Hundreds and hundreds of billions every year. That's just not smart policy. But what President Trump is doing is smart policy. It's really a form of economic patriotism. It's America first. People that voted for Donald Trump voted for the America first ideology. America first. Not sending all our manufacturing and jobs. There have been thousands and thousands and thousands of factories through the process of globalism that have moved down into Mexico and overseas. And do you think all of that's by accident? You understand that America is the one country standing between the globalist and a fully functioning world governing body. America's the last great holdout, let's face it. But there's more. By reducing our dependence on the fragile global supply chains, President Trump's strategy makes the U.S. stronger, more secure, and more self-sufficient. President Trump is not looking for the next few weeks. He's looking for financial stability for years and decades to come. Something has to stop the situation. He's got to stop the bleeding. We got to put a tourniquet on the bleeding. These tariffs are a tourniquet. So yes, President Trump's tariffs are anti-globalist, and for a lot of Americans, that's exactly the point. The American Thinker, the news source, American Thinker, it's a great reliable news source. And you got you got to watch what you're reading there, because sometimes it'll be a little liberal, a little bit. And you got to understand what's going on. That's why I like to understand the Bible prophecies, because it helps me to know what to. I'm not paying attention to that, but yes, this is the truth. So the American Thinker, though, they have some great articles right now on the topic of President Trump's tariffs, and I wanted to give you my perspective on some of them and go through some of the details here, because some people, it's just the news, it's just like drinking from a fire hose, and everybody's like, I just don't understand. It's the headline of every news source. I just don't understand it all. So I want to see if we can make a little bit of sense about it here today, because I think it's prophetic. I think America First is anti-globalism, and it's America pulling away from this global governing system in the end time. So let's talk about Trump's this economic strategy. And, you know, the fact is, it's bold. Would you consider President Trump bold? Oh, man, I would. But he's very calculated. And potentially, this can be transformative in a good way for years and years to come. Imagine if you had a cut in your leg and you were bleeding, just pouring blood, what's the first thing you've got to do? I've got to stop the blood. Well, let's look at America as a human body. And I'm talking about people have cut her and she's been bleeding for years. President Trump is trying to stop the bleeding. He's trying to repair the body, but he's got to stop the bleeding. And so President Trump's economic playbook, it isn't about chaos. It's about he's not just doing this because he's trying to stir stuff up. It's about leverage and long-term reform and ultimately revitalizing the U.S. economy, because elitists have been attacking our economy by grand design for years. The United States, some detail. The United States is the largest consumer of exported goods globally. So the last thing you want to do on those goods is have a trade deficit. Other nations understand that their economies rely heavily on the American market. And that demand is not disappearing. What's the true hurdle then? Well, foreign nations, it's their protectionist trade policies. Many already impose here's the problem. They impose much steeper tariffs on the United States than even what President Trump is applying in return. So you can imagine how much America has been taken advantage of over the years. But President Trump's strategy is simple. If these countries drop their tariffs, then then President Trump will drop the tariffs on them. And now look, if you read the news, figure out what's going on. Now look at all the nations that are lining up to make a deal with America, right? Which is that's a great thing. But the news is, the liberal news sources are making it, oh, President Trump, he needs to be thrown in jail for this. No, he doesn't. Something's got to stop the bleeding, everybody. The power to end this tariff conflict lies with the people, with the other nations. They need to stop hammering us with tariffs. And that's why President Trump said, hey, we're going to start putting tariffs on on the products you get from us. And they said, oh, no, can't do that, or no, the products that are coming into our country. And they said, oh, no, we can't do that. We're willing to make a deal. And that's why countries, including like the European Union, they've already approaching the U.S. to revisit and to renegotiate their trade agreements. Right? Somebody had to do this. It wasn't a President Obama. It wasn't a President Biden. Right? This has been happening for decades now. CEOs, think about this. They're following these economic signals. In other words, we're talking about, we get into stock market conversation, right? So the CEOs, some of them are concerned that there are corporate leaders that they might freeze amid this trade uncertainty. But those uncertainties can be answered by the momentum of the U.S. economy itself. Think about this. Business decisions are driven by trends, okay? And right now, those trends are highly favorable for America. I mean, look at our job growth. In March, the U.S. economy added 228,000 jobs compared to 117,000 in February, which had already been revised down from 151,000. So analysts expected only 135,000 new jobs. And the result, it really blew past all of their forecasts. And that means more Americans with steady paychecks ready to absorb any minor price bumps from these tariffs. Now, again, we might have a little bump, but if we look at the long run, this is going to be very, very good. Think about the oil prices. U.S. crude futures dropped more than 4%, under $59 per barrel, and following a 14% decline over the prior two sessions. So Brent crude also dropped over 4%. So while, of course, you've always got these analysts that tie this to fears of a global slowdown, the broader impact against that is positive, though. Lower energy cost, reduce inflation, and allow producers and consumers alike to stretch their dollars, i.e., gasoline going down. You might feel a little bit more at the grocery store, but the gasoline's down and energy costs are down. And so it's all going to equal out here. And just give it a little bit of time. That's what President Trump is saying. Just give it a little bit of time here. Think about inflation. There's core indicators suggest it's steadily decreasing and a crucial sign of a healthier economy. But it's not going to get, it's going to keep, it's a huge problem. Again, think of America as a body and you've got a cut in your leg. You've got to stop the bleeding. Okay? You can't continue to bleed forever. You're going to have huge problems in the future. And so President Trump is trying to do that. With energy and inflation costs that are falling and job creation surging, the American economy is looking increasingly, let's say, resilient. And global manufacturers, they will continue to chase American consumers. And thanks to President Trump's policies, more of them may be setting up shop inside the United States. That's one of the things he's trying to do is make it more advantageous for manufacturers to bring their businesses back here. And many of them already have. And, you know, when I'm trying to figure out any of these this political agenda, good or bad, I always take a step back and look at the big picture. And that's what I'm trying to do for you today. Because in my opinion, I think it's going right along with the prophecies of the Bible, pulling us out of this, separating us from this world governing body, these entanglements where they're trying to just control everything. And they've got to attack America's economy. Goes right along with Kevin Freeman's book, According to Plan. But there is actually a deeper layer to President Trump's economic plan. One analyst that I read, her name was Tanvi Ratna. She gave a really good explanation. She said tariffs are part of the broader strategy to shield the country from its overwhelming debt burden. When you're under debt, what does the Bible say? The borrower is slave to the lender. Okay? And think about this. In 2025 alone, $9.2 trillion of America's $36+ trillion in debt is coming due in this year. $9.2 trillion of that's coming due. Well, since this can't be paid off in full, the government has to refinance. Okay? Well, here's where President Trump's move is very calculated, because if the debt is rolled into 10-year bonds, then every 1% drop in interest rates translates to roughly $1 billion in annual savings. You say, well, that's only $1 billion. Yeah, that's $1 billion. That's 1,000 million. Think about that. So here's the deal. Instead of chasing the stock markets, everybody, stock markets are low, and look what's going on. Instead of chasing the stock markets and the highs and the lows and everything, President Trump is zeroing in on the bond market, where that's the real long-term economic gains. That's where they lie, right there. So again, President Trump is looking downrange here. And the market's current inflation is a result of excessive money printing and investor fear of really a tangible economy. And, you know, Trump understands kind of the casino effect, and that can't go on forever. And so now is the time to do a rebalance, okay? That's what he's trying to do. It's a rebalancing of these trade deficits in our trade and our finances here in America. That's what President Trump's trying to do. Okay. We're going to get much more into it on the backside of the break.
Breaking news this hour. At least 22 people are reported to have died in a strike in Gaza.
The rise of Islam.
We're trying to bring answers for so many families desperately.
Is the Israel-Hamas-Iran conflict World War III? So let's talk about the four horsemen. What do these horses symbolize? These are the four spirits of the heavens which go forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth. In the end time, the true people of God will not be weak, anemic, and defeated. These prophesied events are revealing we are quickly approaching the time of the Great Tribulation right now.
Now streaming on OneSource and available to order at endtime.com/green. Go to endtime.com/green or call 800-ENDTIME.
What if you could understand Bible prophecy? Dave Robbins, the host of the Endtime Show's TV and radio programs, is holding a free prophecy conference near you. Gain peace and understanding about what the Bible says concerning end-time prophecy. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com/events to see when Dave will be in a location near you.
You know, everyone, my father-in-law, Irvin Baxter, his dad always had these wonderful sayings that just made you think. And he told me one time, he said, you know, Dave, he said, if your outgo exceeds your income, then your upkeep will be your downfall. I thought, man, that is so true. If your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will become your downfall. And that's the way in your home, in your business, or anything. So here's what I want you to think of and consider what President Trump is doing. We've got to lower spending, and we've got to increase our returns. We've got to do that, or America's going to be we'll be $100 trillion in debt before long. So President Trump isn't just looking to refinance our debt. He's actively working to reduce spending, and that includes backing innovation, decentralizing finance, leveraging figures like, like Elon Musk, and even tools like Doge as a symbolic of efficiency and this disruption. We've got to stop the bleeding. And there's more than one way to do that. And yes, tariffs, they themselves generate revenue. Let's face it. I mean, before the 16th Amendment, they were one of the main sources of federal income. And so it's not a new idea. It's really a revival of a tried and tested model. And though some cost increase may occur, they'll likely be offset by new trade deals, lowering energy prices, declining inflation. Think about it. It's all going to balance out. But it might take a little time. You got to trust in what's going on. You got to trust the process. And we want this great reset, but yet we don't want to feel any of the pain of it. Well, sometimes right here in the beginning, there might be just a little, but if you just give it time, it's all going to work out. Just watch. I can see what he's doing, having researched some of this stuff. But really, it's a national wake-up call. Think of America like your household living, but a household living beyond its means. You understand what I'm saying? Just going out to eat every night, and I've got $400 coming in every week, but yet I'm spending $450 or $500, and oops, I spent $600. You can't do that very long, right? And until but the problem is you keep doing that, and you will pile up debt to the point where you look back a year from now and it's like, how in the world did I get in this, right? Well, we've had people, I believe, purposely put us in debt. When you look at what the Department of Government Efficiency, what Elon Musk and Doge and all those go to the Doge website and look at all the crazy nonsense that they have been spending money on. And I read where they were giving them kind of ratings on how many the different complaints that they would have. The lower the complaints, the better rating they got. So rather than deal with the complaint, they were just cutting checks to people. And dealing with, crazy stuff, like transgender grasshoppers and stuff like that. Crazy stuff. But a good financial advisor would say to a person, refinance what you owe at a lower rate, stop overspending, and maintain your income. And that's exactly what President Trump is doing. But he's doing it not in his personal finances, but on a national scale. With 36 trillion plus in total debt, 6.9 trillion in annual spending, 4.7 trillion in yearly revenue, President Trump's multi-pronged approach cut spending, refinance smartly, and stimulate the real economy. I mean, it looks like a path to stabilization, right? I mean, think about it. He's a businessman, very successful businessman. And has he made some mistakes? Sure. Every guy that's ever run a business has made some mistakes. The only ones that aren't making mistakes are ones that have never run a business. The people sitting home on the couch criticizing the people that are running a business. If you've run a business, you're going to make a mistake. You're trying to figure it out. You do this, doesn't work, I got to pivot. Now I got to go here, that thing stopped, I got to move over here. It's called running a business. If you've ever done it, I mean, it's like talking about it and then getting on a bucking bronco and start going down around the ring. Big difference, right? Well, President Trump is running the largest business in the world, the American economy, and the largest exporter of goods on the planet. So, is it a bold vision? Yes, it is. It's deeply strategic. And it might just be, besides God, number one, it might just be what saves our country. Certainly, one of the most important efforts in my lifetime, other than building up our military and everything else that he's doing, trying to stop the bleeding while helping bring money back into America. The American people, I think, by and large, seem to get it. They pretty much, well, I should say the majority of them, not all of them, obviously, but I think by and large, the American people trust President Trump in that he knows what he's doing, and they're criticizing him in these press conferences, and he said, look, I'm willing to I'll take the heat. It's the best for America. If everybody can just trust me, just hold on. I told a lady, I think, on the open line last Friday, give me 6 months, and I can give you a lot better answer to your question. What's this tariffs going to do for America? But it really, I've been looking into it, and I think it's going to be a very good thing. Because of, if you look at it from the big picture here, America, I don't want to rely on all of our pharmaceuticals to come from China. So anybody who's a diabetic or high blood pressure, your medicine, what's the diabetic, metformin, and things like that, things you have to have on a daily basis if you're a diabetic. Well, I don't want that stuff to come from China. If we ever go to a war with China, they lop that off. What are we going to do? All these people that need these drugs, I don't want drugs coming from, our pharmaceutical drugs coming from China. So I think the American people seem to get it, but some people really just can't put their finger, I'm hearing so much from the news, I can't put my finger on it. Even if the media doesn't. Now, there are obviously some conservative news sources that get it, and they're writing good articles on it, and I would encourage you to read everything you can get your hands on. But certainly the media is bought and paid for, and they're going to try to lead you down all kinds of different roads and make Trump look out to be, Adolf Hitler. When he's not. He's America first. He's trying to help America. And so, for decades, globalists, they've sold out America. Bad trade deals. You've heard Trump lately hammering NAFTA. And certainly lost jobs. Jobs going overseas. Factories leaving it's just crazy. Empty factories. And, of course, then comes President Trump, and he wants to stop that. Let me ask you a question. Do you think under President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, do you think they were stopping any of this, or they were aiding in it? Look at USAID and all of the wasteful spending, and just, were they adding regulations to our businesses and the economy, or to the our manufacturing companies and things, or were they removing regulations and letting the economy scream? I think you all know the answer to that. And so, again, President Trump called NAFTA the worst trade deal he's ever seen, and he replaced it. And he took on China, imposed tariffs globally now, stood up for the American workers, and, America first or anti-globalism, whatever you want to call it, it is the major and overriding theme of his presidency. And President Trump's tariffs aren't just policy again. They're really a battle cry. What's the battle cry? America will not bow to the end-time world government. Say, wow, Dave, that kind of sounds prophetic, doesn't it? Think about it. Globalism versus nationalism. In the last 3 elections, though that has been the deciding factor for me. One of the main deciding factors. Is this person a globalist? Are they going to push us right off into world government? Or will they keep us out of it? Globalism versus nationalism. This is, in my mind, from what I'm looking at here, it looks like President Trump is fighting against globalism and all of these cuts that have been given to America, and we've been bleeding. He's trying to stop that to stop our spending and to get, and he's working on the debt and a lot of different things. He's trying to help strengthen America. So there had to be a reset here. And again, I'm not talking about Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. That was globalism 101, what he was doing. But I'm talking about strengthening America. America has a God-given destiny in the end time to stand with and protect Israel all the way through the end time. I believe we're going to see revivals here in America, but will we have to go through some things? Probably. So, we all got to bind together and really stand behind President Trump. You say, is President Trump God? No, he's not. Am I worshiping him? Absolutely not. But compared to the alternative, he is he's a 180, right? And he's diametrically opposed to the Biden-Harris, or I guess it would have been, imagine if we had Harris-Walls in there right now, Tim Walz. And boy, do you think they would have been trying to, well, matter of fact, I know. Look at the Biden-Harris administration. And now look at what would it have been if we'd had the Harris-Walls in there right now. Yikes. You think they'd have been doing this? No, they were complicit with it, folks. Okay, man. All right, coming up on a break here. Let me do First Cup Coffee real quick. You know, First Cup, they're a Christian-owned Patriot Coffee Company. They're out of Texas. I mean, does it get any better than that? And they've got 11 different roasts from, each one's named after American history. You can get all their roasts by going to firstcup.com. Use code ENDTIME to get 10% off. If you subscribe, they'll actually give you another 10% off. So go to firstcup.com. Use code ENDTIME to get 10% off today. You know, everybody, one of my candy stick issues is this world government in the end time. And, you know, because it's one of the biggest things. Now, obviously, we got wars and rumors of wars and all kinds of things are going to happen. But the Antichrist is going to lord over this world governing system. I'm so thankful that the United States will not be part of that world governing system in the end time. And think about it. Since it was the United Nations was created in 1945, all of the presidents, most of them, were just falling in line with it like drunken sailors. Yes, United Nations. But President Trump comes along and says, "No, America first." And I'm glad, very thankful for that.
The Roman government controlled the world, so many people were looking for a different Messiah, a rescuing Messiah. Remember the story of the woman at the well. The woman saith unto him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. And Jesus said unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. Jesus very clearly stated that he was God and that he was the Messiah. We're even more blessed because we haven't seen those things, but yet we believe. When Jesus cried out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? He knew every one of these prophecies had to be fulfilled. He said, it is finished.
Now streaming on OneSource and available to order at endtime.com/revealed. Go to endtime.com/revealed or call 800-ENDTIME.
You know, everybody, for years, my father-in-law and I and Doug and Vince, we've talked about this end-time world government and that we've given the end-time world government and the world war scenario together. And that scenario is simply that, you know, you've heard like Rahm Emanuel, I think Hillary Clinton said it as well, never waste a good crisis. And for the globalists to truly realize they're a fully functioning world governing body, they know that they need a crisis big enough so that the nations, in the name of security, would yield up their sovereignty, to this world governing body. Now, this is the world, they're trying to establish the world government that the Antichrist will eventually usurp authority over. That's what's going on in our world right now. So what they have done is they know they need a crisis. If I came to you right now, let's bring it in right down to our home. If I come to you and I said, you know, I'm a world leader, and I said, bow down to my edicts, and you're like, man, no, I'm not going to comply with your edicts. And I say, you know, yield up your sovereignty to me. But if I can get you scared enough, now I'm not saying me, because I'll never do this, but I'm saying a global leader, a dictator, a despot in the end time, an antichrist. If he can get you scared enough, or the globalist can get you scared enough in the name of security, in the future, nations will be willing to yield up their sovereignty and their armies in the name of security. This is what's coming. It's going to be on the heels of World War III. You say, oh, I don't know, Dave. Prove it. Oh, I'm glad you want me to prove it. No problem. Look at what's been going on over the last 120 years. If you look at World War, there were people that wanted a world governing body. They knew they needed a world government. Or they knew they needed a crisis big enough. They wanted a world government. They knew they needed a crisis big enough to get the nations to yield up their sovereignty and become a part of that world governing body. Okay? And so World War I comes along. And in the minds of the internationalists, these globalists, what was the solution to a world war? World government. You had World War I that ended in, I think, in 1918, close to 1919. 1 year later, in 1920, you had the League of Nations. The world government. It was the solution to world war. League of Nations. But Woodrow Wilson couldn't bring his Congress in because they read the fine print and said, hold on a minute. You're wanting us to wield up so much of our sovereignty of the United States, we can't be part of this League of Nations. So, because Woodrow Wilson, the leader of the President of the United States of America, he couldn't bring his Congress in, the League of Nations failed. Because without the United States, no world government. Okay? So, you say, well, the dream of the world government, it just died. No, I wish it had, but it didn't. The Bible says it's not going to. But my point is, world war, the solution, world government. So that they say, well, maybe that crisis wasn't big enough. So now we need a bigger crisis, but we've got to have the United States involved in it. So here comes World War II. And the United States was dragging her feet. You guys know history. The United States was dragging her feet. We didn't want to get involved in World War II. So what happened? Pearl Harbor. I'm not going to take time today to go through all that. I've done it many times. Pearl Harbor happens. When Pearl Harbor happens, now you've woke up the giant, and we fought two campaigns, the Pacific against the Japanese, and we fought the European campaign. And we were victorious. However, on the heels of that conflict, 1945, the nations of the world signed on to the United Nations, the second effort towards a world governing body. The problem is the United States, our Congress said, we will not sign on to that unless we have a UN Security Council veto power, and we can veto the UN General Assembly resolutions. We'll have veto power over this world governing body. That's the only way we would enter in. Now, it was a ruse for the American people is what it was, because everybody behind it were globalists. But we entered into the United Nations on the heels of World War II. Now, well, because the United States was granted veto power, the victor nations of World War II wanted it. Russia, China, France, Great Britain, and the United States, they all said, well, if the United States have it, we want it. So the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council were given veto power. And that veto power today renders the United Nations a paper tiger. Any one of those nations, France, Great Britain, Russia, China, the United States, they can veto anything that the United Nations does. So, it's a paper tiger. If Russia wants to invade Ukraine, the General Assembly and the United Nations, they can pass a resolution against it, and Russia, as one of the five permanent members of the UN Security Council, they can veto that. We want to invade Ukraine, veto, and they invade. The United Nations, the world governing body is, or I should say the world governing body wannabe, presently, could do nothing to stop them. Paper tiger. They can, the UN Security Council, the UN Secretary General Guterres, he can say, I forbid this. This is detestable. And Russia's like, I don't care what you say, we're doing what we want. That's the United Nations right now. Okay? Unless they can get a NATO force together or something like that and go into a nation. However, the dream of a truly, fully functioning world governing body is not dead. Believe me, there are people that are working behind the scenes to make all this happen and to realize the dream. Okay, my point is, World War I wasn't a big enough crisis. World War II wasn't a big enough crisis. The Bible says there's a world government coming. So what do we need? Guess what's coming? World War I, World War II, those weren't a big enough crisis. World War III is coming. And on the heels of that, the majority of the nations of the world will yield up their sovereignty and yield up their armies to a world governing body. They won't protect their borders. It's going to be a global state that answers to a world governing body. Now, I can prove scripturally Jordan, Israel, and the United States will not come into full compliance with that world governing body. But World War III is coming, and a fully functioning world governing body is on the horizon. Now, I was going to get into President Trump and Netanyahu and their speech today and everything that was going on and them having negotiations for a nuclear deal with Iran this Saturday and all that stuff. But I want to talk to you quickly about a LifeSite News article. The title of the article, get this. Remember my World War III scenario with the globalist. LifeSite News, a girl named Whitney Webb. Here's the article. Globalists need a World War II type catastrophe to usher in a new financial system. Now, I know we're going to have a World War II type system, World War II type catastrophe, but it's going to be about 40 times that. The Bible says it's going to kill, Revelation 9, verse 13 through 21, it's going to kill 1/3 of the world's population. But this lady writes this article, the title, Globalists Need a World War II type catastrophe to usher in a new financial system. So what happened here? Well, let me just kind of summarize it up here. The lady named author Whitney Webb, she said that the globalists need a World War II type catastrophe in order to usher in this new international financial system using digital IDs and digital currencies. Now, you guys know Bible prophecy. You know that Revelation 13 is calling for a world government, world religious system, and a global economic sanctioning system called the Mark of the Beast. This lady said, hey, for them to truly realize what they want, it's going to be another World War scenario. We've been talking about this for years now. And she's saying just to usher in this new international financial system. She said in an interview published by the Library of Wealth, Webb discussed the monetary system that the globalist elite plans to roll out. She said the globalists, they just need some sort of a big event on the scale of a World War II or some large event that's equally disruptive in order to be like, she says, quote, all right, now it's time for the new financial governance system after this big event, like they did after World War II. And, of course, she said, and I'm quoting here, I think they sort of give it away when they say that this is the new Bretton Woods movement that needs to be seized. She said, you know, of course, Bretton Woods was what came out of World War II, essentially, and was the creation of a new financial global governance system. And so, for those of you that don't know, the Bretton Woods system was based on The 1944 agreement among 44 Western countries negotiated at the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods. That was, New Hampshire. And the system established the U.S. dollar as the dominant world currency, requiring countries to guarantee the convertibility of their currencies into the U.S. dollar at fixed parity rates, while the dollar was convertible at $35 per troy ounce of fine gold. The system practically ended, though, when President Richard Nixon, I'm going to say air quotes, quote unquote, temporarily suspended the convertibility of the U.S. dollar into gold back in August of 71, ending the gold standard and turning the dollar into a fiat currency. In other words, our dollar bill is not backed by gold. Okay? We've done away with the checks and balances. That's all gone. Used to, we could only have as much money in circulation as we had in Fort Knox and wherever we held the gold. Now, we went off of that. Now, it's that they're just printing money like there's no tomorrow, and it's just backed by the good faith that you, the American people, will cover the debt, basically. So, but according to Webb here, this new financial system is going to consist of universal digital IDs, digital currencies, as well as the tokenization of natural assets to monetize them. So think about this. This lady from LifeSite News writes this article, and it's talking about, now she's saying about a global financial system, but I'm telling you, on the heels of World War III, we're going to move into a fully functioning world governing body. The Antichrist will eventually usurp authority over that. And yes, he's going to have a fully functioning global digital ID system. That's why, what do you think all the talk is about cashless societies and moving off of a physical currency? Because the implementation of the mark of the beast is not possible without digital IDs. This is where we're headed. That's why we talk about artificial intelligence. We're talking about central bank digital currencies, the global efforts of the United Nations and the World Bank to issue a digital ID to every person on the earth. All of these are precursors to the mark of the beast. This lady lays out the scenario for a global financial system, the same scenario we've been laying out for years about a World War III, about a world government. It all ties together. World War III is going to kick off a lot of this. We've been watching it happening for years. Wow. When I saw that article, I thought, you have got to be kidding me. All of these things, it's happening so fast, everybody. Make sure you're ready, because the Bible says, in such an hour as you think not, your Lord doth come. It's just around the corner. Make sure you're ready to meet the Lord. We're right here in the end time.